Good afternoon to you. Mark Stott with HurricaneTrack.com here. It is Monday, Labor Day 2022, September 5th. Good to see you here for the Hurricane Outlook and discussion where we're going to talk about making up for lost time. You know, August was so dead, and now we've got a lot of activity out in the Atlantic, and obviously it is good news to report that nothing is impacting land directly, but there's a few areas that we have to watch that could have some impacts. The Eastern Pacific with our tropical storm out there, Kay, soon to become a hurricane, a very large and sprawling hurricane at that. And then in the Atlantic, we have Earl, which will send eventually some swells and that energy towards the southeast coast and other areas of the southwest Atlantic basin. And that could produce some rip currents in the coming days and maybe, just maybe, direct impacts for our friends in Bermuda. And then there's more stuff brewing off of Africa. So it's definitely busy, just not a lot of landfall threats, none really to speak of, and certainly that is a welcome change from what we have seen these last several years. So let's see what's going on out there. But first, as they say, I want to show you something. I'm kind of proud of this. I went down to the beach last night and watched the SpaceX launch the Falcon 9 of some more Starlinks into the atmosphere and the outer atmosphere, whatever, low Earth orbit. And that was at Wrightsville Beach. But our cameras along the outer banks of North Carolina also caught that launch. All right, so this is from Rodanthe. This is the pier. There's the rocket right there as I annotated it. You might have seen this on Twitter already, but there it goes right there. It's interesting. Let me just rewind it back. This guy right here is out there looking for it, and little does he know that it's over there. And watch, he's just going to kind of give up. He doesn't see it. It's off to his right. He's looking at his phone a couple of times like, I think it's supposed to go. And then he just leaves. It's like, oh, if he had just waited a little longer, he would have seen it go by. And then there's the first stage reentry. Just pretty cool. We've got these permanent cameras set up. This is a house. By the way, the Rodanthe Pier is just right over here in this shot. Right over here. This is a street in Rodanthe. The pier is sitting right over here. Actually, it's right there. Sorry. And we've got all these cameras out there, and you never know. Sometimes I see something kind of interesting, and I just wanted to show you that. It's on Twitter if you want to see it again. All right. Now on with today's update. Earl in the southwest Atlantic, still struggling a little bit, but it's going to get there. Probably going to be a major hurricane up in this region somewhere through here. How close to Bermuda? We're going to have to watch that for sure. And then here's Danielle weakening just a little bit. And then this is, if it's not already, it'll be Invest Area 95L before too long. And this is what everything looks like over the next 5 days. There's just not enough strong high pressure sitting over the western Atlantic right now to get Earl to go west, for example. That's not going to happen. And then the weakness is just sitting out here about like this. And so it's like this carousel of storms that are just going to go around and around like that. And, you know, that's a good thing. We can dissipate the heat. I know it's not as interesting. I mean, honestly, if everything stays out at sea. And by the way, I don't really think there's such a thing as a fish storm. I know that's very popular and a very cute thing to say. And there's lots of memes that float around. But there are ships, there are planes that fly out that have to deal with the convection with these tropical cyclones. They send swells out into the ocean. You know, yes, they stay out in the open ocean, but fish live under the water. So they're not fish storms. Hurricanes don't happen under the water. They have a little bit of influence, but whatever. I'm just nitpicky on that. These will stay out over the open ocean, generally speaking. All right. In the Eastern Pacific, Kay, they're going to get pretty lucky here because this is going to be a big, sprawling hurricane. It is going to have some impacts for our friends along the Baja. Maybe some moisture up here for the southwest U.S., but I think that this very strong area of high pressure that's sitting out over the west that is making it so darn hot in the western states these last few days, that should keep, basically it's like a big area, like a big bubble, and it's expanded enough that it'll keep Kay just offshore of the Baja, and it'll deflect it out into the Pacific instead of allowing it, as some of the earlier model runs, some of them brought it up the Gulf of California towards Arizona. Some are much sharper, you know, even towards Mazatlan at some points. Now, though, it looks like it's going to basically turn like this and then just die out over the eastern Pacific with time. But some of that moisture might get pulled in, that's a little too far east, into the desert southwest and Southern California. We'll see. Hopefully that could be the case because you still desperately need the rainfall out there. Satellite animation this afternoon, courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com. What a beautiful shot. This is just something else. By the way, you can just clearly see the outline of the ridge out here. That is smoke right there. If you look really closely, I do record this in high definition, so you should see it on YouTube. Yeah, there's still some wildfires going on out there, so you can see the smoke out west. But there's this big fat ridge out here, and that big bubble of high pressure, very dense in the atmosphere, and that will keep our tropical storm down here from coming right up into the Baja directly and into the southwest. It just can't do so. Meanwhile, there's Earl coming up to the north of Puerto Rico and vicinity. Has a pretty good tail that it's developed on there, a feeder band. And once the shear lets up, and it's going to find a pretty good sweet spot up here, I think. This should be a very powerful hurricane, and it will send eventually some swells towards the east coast and the islands down here as well. And we will have the threat of rip currents at some point, and I'll make sure that we address that when the time comes. And then here's Danielle, still spinning now north of 40 degrees latitude. Wow, what an unusual season, but it is making up for lost time. Our ace, by the way, is, we'll just round it up and call it 14 points. And it's still below where we should be. We should be at about 40, 41 units right now. And so we're only, if math serves, 30-ish something percent. If my math is correct, in the low 30s. We're 30-something percent, maybe 32% of where we should be. But we are adding several points a day with two systems out there, and the stronger Earl gets, the higher that ACE score starts to go. I might do a whole thing about ACE maybe on Wednesday, just to explain it to people that don't know it, and like, what does he keep talking about, this ACE thing? Who cares? Well, it does matter, and I can explain it more. In fact, I'll just put that on my list of things to talk about from Wednesday when we do the hurricane outlook and discussion then. All right, sliding on out to the east a little bit more. Again, another perspective of Earl. There's Danielle, and then this will eventually be 95L, and that'll probably be Fiona at some point, and it'll curve on off into the open Atlantic. Again, the lack of strong ridging all across the Atlantic. We just don't have it right now to get these to come all the way across, unlike 5 years ago when we had Irma. Today was the day that it went really crazy Cat 5 through this region, and it was just such a nightmare for that area. The ridge back then was very strong over the North Atlantic. We do not have that in place this year, and so it's a little bit different, and different enough that the outcomes of these different systems out here, I mean, you can literally see almost the steering pattern of everything out here. There is high pressure sitting over here, and we've got the big ridge out here, general troughing in between, and there you go. Fairly simple overall. It's more complex than that, but that's the easy way to describe it for you and to show you. All right, so real quick on the track map, there's K, the closest point that it should get, keeping the core well offshore, but it'll have a big enough wind field and just overall circulation that there will be some impacts from Cabo up through San Carlos and all the way up a good portion of the Baja Peninsula. Some swells out there, big waves, and some rain showers. Maybe some of these dry river beds through here could get filled. We shall see. Now, we're kind of lucky that our good buddy Brent was down in that area for a wedding this past weekend. He's still there, and he's going to work his way up over the next few days between Cabo and San Carlos and just do what he can to document and capture the impacts. He is well equipped for that. He knows what he's doing. He's been studying the geography. We've been talking back and forth. So while there will not be any direct impacts, we will get some stuff from Brent. We'll see what he gets over the next few days as K closes in down there. So we appreciate Brent doing that for us. All right. In the Atlantic, just again a little perspective here. Look how far north into the far North Atlantic Danielle will eventually get. At some point through here, it'll transition to extratropical or post-tropical. It'll shed that deep, warm core, and it'll spread out and become a large ocean storm, and it will no longer be a true tropical cyclone. And they have it as a 3 for Earl up here. I imagine it'll do so earlier. The modeling is indicating that, generally speaking. And again, just real quick, I want to zoom in here. Bermuda is up here, right there, And the closest approach to Bermuda, if we put our little distance calculator on here, right there. Come on, try again. Got to learn to use my own map. About 150 miles or so. There we go. Let's do it again. About 150 miles or so from the center of Bermuda to the center, 130 to the center of Earl. And remember, they're not small like that. It can have a large center. So tropical storm conditions in Bermuda here, and I can zoom in a little bit more just to kind of show you. Our friend Howard here says he's been coned. It's a verb, coned, meaning the cone of uncertainty, whatever you want to call it, is over you, coned. So depending on how close this gets and how the core is, etc., yes, Bermuda could see some impacts. And I'm going to show you an interesting tweet here in just a minute. It's not over in terms of a direct hit. There's still room for error here, and Bermudans need to watch this closely. All right, real quick, in the East Pack for our K out here, K-A-Y, going to move up towards the Baja, but just maybe glance off and then head out. I mean, that's pretty close there at the 5,000-foot level in Southern California. The GFS says there could be hurricane force winds. I don't know. That's really interesting. If this comes up a little bit more north and east, that's on Saturday. I don't know. I mean, flying all the way out to San Diego for that. It'd be different if it looked like it was going to make landfall. Even as a dying tropical storm, I'd have to be there just to see that. But I don't think that's going to happen. But you folks up there, pay attention. Could get some amazing and even dangerous, very dangerous possible swells coming up with a dying hurricane not too far offshore of Southern California. Kind of a rare event indeed. All right, in the Atlantic, here is Earl. And watch what happens. It really starts to ramp up there. It goes fairly to the east of Bermuda, southeast of Bermuda. Bermuda's right there. And that wind field is, just depends on the H-Wharf, the H-Mon, the GFS, the Euro, the Canadian. There's a lot of different models. The GFS keeps it comfortably away, I guess. We'll have to ask Howard. Is that comfortable enough for you? And it better be, because 946, that's nothing to take lightly at all. And there is enough room in the way this pans out. This is what, 84 hours out? Probably not going to be too much of a deviation back to the west or left of track, as they say, but enough so that we still need to watch this. And that's what this tweet here I wanted to show you from Andrew. The ridge to the northwest of Earl at 24 hours on the 12Z Euro is the one that, if it is slightly stronger and sticks around a little bit more, could cause Earl to move more north and a bit slower and maybe a bit more west. And it's this one right here. In fact, I can click on this picture. There we go. That right there, this little piece of ridge, it's like a thumb ridge, that's what we call it. Kind of sticks over it like a little thumb there. Let me bring me back. See what I'm talking about? It kind of goes like that over the top of it, like holding it down. And that's what that is. That's more dense air in the atmosphere, and it slows the northern progress of Earl just by it being there. So if it's just a little bit thicker, a little bit larger in the atmosphere, we're talking 3+ days out, 3 to 4 days out, then Earl, that 130 miles, that's enough of a margin of error that you could get hurricane force winds or a direct hit. Not likely, but is something to certainly keep an eye on for Bermuda. And I'll certainly be doing so in case it looks like that might happen. How quickly can I get on a plane and get out to Bermuda? It is very expensive, and you got to go through a process and whatever, but we'll see. So far, I haven't had to make such reservations. All right, going on along to the next part of the update today. Water temperatures, sea surface temperature anomalies, still ridiculously warm over the North Atlantic and the North Pacific. Very interesting the way these have evolved. And I want to draw your attention down here. We'll use black to point it out. Look at that right there. 5 Celsius. We're off the scale with these blobs, if you will. Just insane how warm that is relative to average. But let me zoom in on this. I want to draw your attention to this area in the eastern Atlantic, northeast Atlantic, right here. That's where Danielle has been. And it has carved out just a small area, taking away some of that heat, just a little bit. Not a lot, but certainly just a little bit there. And by the way, this is what the typhoon did out in the Westpac, churning up the ocean over there just a little bit as well, down in the deeper part of the tropics. But yeah, it's going to take a lot more. Maybe Earl comes up here and carves out some more of this. We shall see. But still just ridiculously warm in the far North Atlantic. But the main development region is also warmer than average. A lot of heat down there still relative to the past 20 or 30 years or whatever it is. So yeah, and then even looking at the weekly average here from the Reynolds method at the National Hurricane Center, 1 degree Celsius roughly. Some of these areas are warmer than that, right near Africa. And then there's all that just insane warmth in the far North Atlantic, in and around Newfoundland. I mean, look, there's the 4-degree isotherm there. There's 5. I mean, that's the weekly average. Weekly average of 5 Celsius above the long-term average. And then even off the the East Coast here, 1 degree Celsius, all in the subtropics. Something's definitely out of balance, and I think that's had an influence on the way the hurricane season has progressed. But as I've said, we are making up for some lost time right now. It's not entirely dead, not by a long shot. All right, actual sea surface temperatures, if you're, were down at the beach or getting ready to go down to the beach today, generally from the Outer Banks of North Carolina, south and west from there, very nice. Low 80s near shore, mid 80s out in the Gulf Stream and vicinity. The Gulf of Mexico still very, very warm. There's your 30 Celsius isotherm there. And then 31 Celsius near shore to Florida. Gradually taking the edge off here, but it's still very, very warm. We have a lot of hurricane season left. You don't need me to remind you as to what can happen if something gets into the Gulf and the atmosphere cooperates. The water temperatures will not hold back anything. So far, so good. Maybe we get lucky, but we don't know for sure. We certainly don't know for sure. And that'll lead me to the last part of the presentation today. What about the future? Where are we headed as we go through the rest of the month? The Madden-Julian oscillation, the euro, this is a mess. Even looking at the ensemble in here, like, what? I mean, it's useless. Really it is. There's no way to discern from this what is the Madden-Julian oscillation going to do over the next couple of weeks or so. So let's go over to the JMA. Is it a little bit more clear? Yeah, it is. For whatever reason, we're here right now, and let's highlight it or whatever with sky blue. We're here now, and the JMA mean is forecasting it to amplify back into phase 2 and then kind of stay there. Its ensembles are agreeing to that as well, and that would put the Atlantic in a more favorable position again. And so that leads me to this. Let me go all the way back over to this satellite shot. Consider this is what we have now with no MJO activity in the Atlantic basin. It's just pockets of favorability among a very hostile background state. Remember, we've got the sinking air. There's no dust to speak of. The dust, by the way, should have pointed this out earlier, is way up here to the north, not impacting our tropical waves any longer. But if it's this busy now, what will it be like as we get towards the climatological peak? That's a big plus for something to develop, and the MJO starts to become favorable as the JMA, the Japanese Meteorological Agency, is indicating it might. This will certainly be something to keep an eye on as we go forward. And then I just thought I would end with the euro here. Over the next 10 days, there's that wheel out there. Journey has that song, Wheel in the Sky. Well, there's your wheel in the sky out in the East Atlantic there. There's the high pressure area. And everything basically just rotates around it. As you can see, we go back and forth, and our tropical systems come off and try to turn out. The lack of ridging in the Western Atlantic keeping us safe out there for now. But even over the next week, let's just take this out to 168 hours, the possibility that we would have had, there would be Fiona. It comes out and does its thing. And then this would be Gaston, potentially. And that would be up to, what, 7 named storms? And we're only to September 12th at that point. So, you never know. Could be interesting here as we start to get towards the mid-month point and beyond. All right, so busy, no impacts to speak of a significant nature. And at least that part of this is good. Real quick before I let you go, a couple people are asking about our Discord because I showed that recently. That is part of our Patreon. I wish I could make it just open to the public, but then it would be Twitter, right? And it would just be, well, you know. So our Discord is part of our Patreon, and Patreon is how we fund what we do. But it's more than that. It is this great community of people that get together. We talk about things. In fact, when I'm done with this video, we're getting ready to have our Zoom meeting that we do, and we get on there on the Zoom, and we all talk with each other, and it's just a great community. But that's what that's all part of, Discord. Of course, we have our live cams, we have our podcast and other stuff. And then when there are landfalls or severe weather or winter storms, all year round we do stuff, and that's all through our Patreon. If you're interested in that, it's always there, hurricane season or not. Patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. Download the Patreon app, search for HurricaneTrack, and if you are a patron currently, you should have Discord baked in already. Just make sure you get the Discord app, and then you should be able to just link it right up once you get on to Discord. It should just pop you in there. If not, send me a message through Patreon or email me, and we'll help you. I want to make sure you get in there. A lot of people like the Discord. I do. It's amazing. It's like, where's that been? Well, it's been there. I just only discovered it in the last about 8 months or so because of our back-end team that said, you got to give this a try, Mark, and we do, and I love it. All right, there you go. I'm done. Let me get this online for you and then get over to our Zoom meeting for our patrons. Have a great rest of your Monday. I'll be back for the Hurricane Outlook and discussion again on Wednesday. But tomorrow morning, of course, I'll have the What's Up segment. So I hope you'll join me then. Mark Stout with Hurricane Track. I'll talk to you again tomorrow morning.